Today I'm going to use GarageBand and show you how I create samples of songs, then make them into my loop library for remixing and other projects. First thing I'm going to do, I've got my GarageBand file up in here, and I'm going to go down into my media files. I want to find the song I want to do. I've already chosen to use Stevie Wonder's Superstition, so I'm going to go ahead and drop and drag that song into my file. You notice I put it at the very beginning of the track. It's kind of helpful. Next thing I want to do is listen to the song for a little bit and find a segment of music that I want to sample. The segment could be a couple measures, a couple bars, whatever you want to do. I usually go for about 8 counts, sometimes a little bit more than that. So I'm going to just listen now. Again, I'm looking for the beginning of a couple measures. That downbeat right there, go back again a little bit. That downbeat I quite like when the little organ starts. It's right around here. Now, in order to go and cut and find the sample I want, I'm actually going to use the Command G function to turn off the grid snapping. That allows me to take my playhead here and move it wherever I want to. Notice it can be in between some of the measure markings and things like that. So I'm going to choose that. That's the beginning of my phrase. Now I'm going to use Command T to cut the song right there. That should be count 1. Alright, looks like right around there is the next count 1. I counted about 8 counts, so I'll go back and show you that again. I'm going to count about 8 counts of the song, again, starting at that cut. And then I want to get not count 8, but the next count 1, because I need to get the full 2 measures. So here I go again. I'll count out loud for you. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 1. So right around there again was that 1. I'm going to move it a little bit to the top of that peak. I'm going to zoom in a little bit so you can see what I'm doing a little better. So near the beginning of that raised portion there, I'm again doing Command T to splice out the song. Zooming back out, I found the beginning and the end of a section that I want to use for a sample. Now, I'm going to go in here and get rid of all the other sections of the song for now, because this is all I want to mess with. I'm going to take that, drag it to the very beginning of the track. I'm going to zoom in again a little bit for us. Alright, just double check again. I'm going to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and alright. One way to determine if my loop's going to work, I'm going to go back into my GarageBand loops here, and I've already selected that I'm going to look at some of my favorite drums. Get rid of this real quick. I found this sample I'm going to use. I'm going to take that GarageBand loop and put it right there below or next to my sample. Now you'll notice these are different in length. The GarageBand loop, when I pull it in there, the tempo of my project is set at 120 beats per minute. So that's how fast that is right now. The fact that my Superstition sample looks longer means that that song is actually a slower tempo. It's not 120 beats per minute. So right now I'm going to come down here to the tempo slider and I'm going to move that down, allowing me to adjust that Superstition song. Now this is not adjusting the tempo of Superstition. This is actually adjusting the tempo of the other GarageBand loop. So let me just demonstrate that. Right now it's at 99. I'm going to go in here, mute my sample. You listen to that GarageBand loop. Much slower now. That seemed like it might be closer to that Superstition song. So I'm going to play the both of them together. I'm going to zoom in. One way to set these two tracks to make sure they're synced up together, I like to go look at the snare drums. So right here was a snare drum. This right here is a snare drum of my GarageBand loop. So here it sounds like a clap. Alright, so this one. Now, in theory, a lot of pop songs and R&B and hip-hop stuff like that, they have kind of a similar structure. So this should be a snare drum of the Superstition song. You'll notice that this peak, I didn't quite maybe get right at the beginning, count 1. Now what I'm going to do is go up here, make sure my grid snapping is off. So I can just slide it. I'm pulling back some of that song. I'm going to put my playhead at count 2 right here on that snare drum. Then I'm going to grab the Superstition song and move that so that snare drum looks like it's more matched up. The top of that peak is now matched up. And if I go to the next snare drum, click twice, or pardon me, 4 times right there. Again, that looks more lined up right there. Now turning off grid snapping because I need the beginning of my sample to be snapped at the very beginning of the song right there. Now in theory, the song's going to sound a little closer to being in sync with each other. A little better. Now you'll notice that right here, my other sample is not the same length. That's usually indicative of a couple things. One, I might need to drag out and make sure I'm really, turning grid snapping back off. Making sure I'm really on count 1. Zooming in just a little bit here. Looks pretty close to me. Let's go see. I'm looking for a snare drum again. Some of these peaks and things like that are often snare drums. Doesn't look too bad. Gonna listen again. I don't know. I still think the Superstition is not exactly right. So going to the end of my song again, the end of my sample. Gonna drag this back. Oh, grid snapping back on now because again I want to snap right there. Now, with those 2 tracks right next to each other, zooming out a little bit, so you can see the whole sample there, I'm going to go down here and turn on the loop function. Usually listening to it a few times like this will give me an opportunity to determine, does that sound right? Now, the default GarageBand loop is actually 4 measures, so I'm going to go ahead and drag back the loop a little bit because I only want to loop those 2 measures and listen for a little bit. Loop sounds pretty good. Alright, so now the next part of this is I want to take that little sample there and add it to my loop library. I'm going to turn back off my loop function. I'm going to add this little sample to my loop library. But to do that, I'm going to go up into my edit menu, go down to add to loop library. This opens up some of the descriptions I need to set. I need to name my loop. I'm going to call this one S Wonder hyphen Superstition and number 1. Now, you'll notice right here, I need to make sure that the type of loop this is clicked. A one-shot does not allow me to adjust the tempo, so I want to make sure it's that kind of loop. If I get it doesn't give me the option to do that, it like defaults to the one-shot, it means that something on my loop is not quite right. I haven't have it snapped right to 2 measures, things like that. Going to go in here now. You got to make sure you give it a genre. I'm going to go ahead and call this urban. You look down here. You also have to give it a mood descriptor. This is some of the for cataloging in your loop library. You need to pick some of these things. So I'm going to just go ahead and say grooving. So again, got a title. I got the genre, and I've got a mood descriptor here. And most importantly, that loop button is on. I'm going to go ahead and create that loop. After some processing, look over here. It throws it right there. The bottom here, my loop library. S Wonder Superstition. Now, funny thing is, you think that's just exactly the same thing. Let me show you very quickly why it is not. I'm going to delete my original Superstition sample because here's my loop. Alright, with the GarageBand loop next to it. with one loop, I have some options now of what I can start doing in GarageBand. I'm going to turn back on the loop function, just playing over and over again. I can go in here and adjust the tempo now. I'm going to take just a few minutes and kind of throw in some loops there, give you some other things, and give you an idea how I could start a remix.